Welcome to the Earning Freedom Podcast. I am Michael Santos with michaelsantos.com and prisonprofessor.com. We are really excited to be continuing this effort with Success After Prison. That is my newest book. Here is a picture of it if you're watching on YouTube. I am providing it free of charge with these audio podcasts, video podcasts. Why? Because I want to share strategies that empower people through challenges, whether it's through prison, whether they're in a difficult circumstance of any kind. I want them to see the strategies I learned from masterminds, strategies that empowered me through the journey and allowed me to come back to society strong with my dignity intact and numerous income opportunities, because I know that if you choose to embark upon the same deliberate, values-based, goal-oriented strategy, you too can overcome any challenges that you're enduring right now. That's what goes through in this particular book, which is Success After Prison, How I Built Assets Worth $1 Million Within 2 years of release from 26 years inside of prison, and how you can succeed too. I've got a number of other books. They're all available on my website, but this particular episode of podcasts and YouTube video and discs that we're creating is specifically for people in struggle, specifically to let you know that you can start making decisions right now that will lead to a better outcome for your future. That's what everything that I offer is about. If you haven't listened to some of the previous episodes, you can just tune into iTunes or tune into YouTube or visit my Facebook page or YouTube, and you can just they're all sequential. So I'm going to be reading episode 13. I read in 20-minute blocks, 20-minute segments. If you want to have a digital copy of the book, it's free. Really, just visit michaelsantos.com, sign into my newsletter site. It just pops up as soon as you log on. Give me your best email address, and automatically you will receive a free digital copy. No charge. Why? Because I'm passionate about helping you. I'm passionate about showing these lessons that inspired me through the journey, lessons that I learned from people like Socrates, Mandela, Viktor Frankl, so many other masterminds that got me through the journey and allowed me to come back to society strong. I really want to share those messages with other people because they made a huge difference in my life, and I know they can make a difference in your life. If you're watching this, though, on YouTube or on iTunes, it's my hope that you will support the program by subscribing, rating, and reviewing the show, because that's the way we get broader distribution. I really want to connect with more people who are challenged or family members who have loved ones in prison. I want them to see that there's a path through this, and I want to show them the path that worked for me. And if it works for them, awesome. They also can seize these same opportunities. Because the reality is, although I did 26 years in prison, there were tens of thousands of people who served time with me, and not all of them had this level of this type of outcome. And that's why I really want to change the equation. I want to disrupt that process that people go into corrections and they can't seem to navigate their way out into a life of success and relevance and meaning. And that's what Earning Freedom is all about. That's what Success After Prison is all about. Success After Prison is about conveying a message that the decisions that you make when you go into prison have an enormous influence on your prospects for success on the other side. Now, in the previous episode number 12, I was getting into how Carol and I were able to use our minds and our strategy to overcome the challenge of having a 000 credit score when we wanted to get into the housing market and buy our first piece of property. How did we do it? Creative financing. We just thought creatively. I told you the story in the last episode about Saul Kahn of Khan Academy, a story I listened after when we were participating together at a speech in Silicon Valley. He inspired me because he's really a mastermind. He's a guy that's really living his dream. He's executing his plan. He is contributing to the making of a better world while simultaneously building a great life, right? So let me tell you how my journey continued back to society after 26 years in prison, and how I am working to build a life of stability and strength. And I just want you to understand that process. So I'll continue with the reading now. So I visited, after what did I say here before, that I visited Chris and Seth, okay? You don't know Chris and Seth, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about them. They were partners of Advanced Building Solutions. It's a premier real estate development company that has more than $100 million worth of properties under development in Northern California. And although I'd never met Chris prior to my release from prison, my friend Lee could introduce me. Now, without a doubt, Chris and Seth were the type of people I had in mind also when I thought about avatars, which I've spoken about in previous episodes. If leaders like Chris and Seth were going to believe in me, they would want to see a record showing that I was different from the foolish young man who began selling drugs when he was 20. I always believed that my adjustment through prison would have a direct influence on my ability to overcome challenges upon release. And it was so that concept that I've been trying to convey of avatars, thinking about them, thinking about what they would expect of me, and then sowing the seeds to get me there would make it possible for me to find support from successful real estate developers that could help me. And I needed help. So when I met with Chris and Seth, I showed them the record of accomplishments I'd worked hard to build. And I want you to know it was Lee that introduced me to them and vouched for me. So I could show them that I was a published author, that I had academic credentials. I mean, I earned an undergraduate degree from Mercer University, a master's degree from Hofstra University, and those are the types of credentials that they would respect, right? I as a published author, remember my goals when I walked in? It was to educate myself, it was contribute to society, it was to build a support network. I believed that if I executed that model, that was going to help me come back to society successfully. Well, I had my university degrees, so I was educated the way society thought, or avatars would think. I had my published books, so clearly I had contributed to society. And Lee introduced me to Chris and Seth, so my support network was helping. So you see, it was a plan. And then I executed the plan, and it made all of the difference in the world. I could also show them that I'd been married for 10 years. I mean, that's an accomplishment, right? I mean, in this day and age where, a significant number of marriages end in divorce, I was in prison the whole time. I was never with my wife anywhere outside of a prison visiting room, but yet we were married for 10 years. And further, I had support from Lee. As I said, he vouched for me. So any business person in the San Francisco Bay Area has enormous respect for Lee. Why? Because of Lee's credentials. I mean, he runs businesses that employ hundreds of people. He does hundreds of millions of dollars in revenues. With his vouching for me, it made it a lot easier for Chris and Seth to believe in me. And that's what I'm talking about, sowing those seeds. Let the roots grow. Let them grow deep underground so that when you are coming back to society, you're like that bamboo tree that has roots that are 50 feet deep, and then the tree will shoot up when it's ready, right? They say an overnight success is always 20 years in the making. Start making your overnight success right now. So as I met with Chris and Seth, we spoke about a new real estate project that they were developing in Petaluma, which is a quaint city about 40 miles north of San Francisco, right on the border there of Marin County and Sonoma County. So a really nice area. And although Chris and Seth hadn't broken ground on the properties when I met with them, they told me that when they finished the development, each house in that development was going to list on the market for about $400,000. And I wanted to buy one of those houses. It was a brand new house. And if I could buy Carol and me a brand new house, I really felt as if, wow, I'd be planting my seed for a prosperous retirement. Right? But there was no way, I could qualify. We didn't have the financial wherewithal to step up to the plate. And so I would need their help to buy a $400,000 house. Well, although an initial assessment of our credit score would suggest that, we weren't credit worthy at the time. I mean, I just got out of jail. But what I could do, and what you could do if you sow the seeds right now, is I asked them for help. I asked Chris and Seth to consider us both for the growth that we would make in the years to come. Besides not qualifying for a mortgage, we couldn't afford to set aside 20% of the purchase price as a down payment on the property. I mean, I couldn't give 80 grand down, 400 grand, 20% would be $80,000. I couldn't give $80,000 of my assets. I mean, all I had was $85,000 when I walked out of prison. By the time I bought a computer and bought a car and bought clothes, I was already down probably like 12, 15 grand. So I couldn't give them $80,000. So I didn't have anything that was necessary. But despite those weaknesses, I persuaded those developers that we would be a good credit risk if they would agree to finance us on a purchase. How does that happen? Was I lucky? I mean, is that luck? Or is that hard work that began while I was inside of a federal prison, and hard work that translated into more people believing in me, more people wanting to have a vested interest in helping me succeed. And to make my case, I encouraged Chris and Seth to consider what we had accomplished under difficult circumstances, Carol and me, what we'd accomplished under difficult circumstances. Then I could show them the plans that we had made to grow. If they would extend us financing for a few years while I got on track, I believe that a lot would change that would allow us to qualify for a traditional mortgage. For example, Carol would graduate from nursing school and she would increase her earning power. I would finish my obligation to the Bureau of Prisons, which would make me eligible to apply for credit. And the business that I intended to develop would provide me with more earnings. So despite the perceived weakness of our credit score in the fall of 2012, when I just was in the halfway house, I made a persuasive case that we would be stronger financially in years to come and be able to qualify for a mortgage. And I just needed them to believe in me for a little while. Who are you going to need to believe in you? Right? If you ask those questions, who are you going to need to believe in you? Ask those questions right now, and you're going to find that you can start saying, okay, I am going to need a banker. I am going to need a realtor. I am going to need a real estate developer. I'm going to need, a financier. I'm going to need an employer. I don't know. I didn't establish your path for success. I want you to do that. I want you to tell me what is success. Don't tell me. First of all, lie back in your rack, lie back in your bed, wherever you are, and just introspect. Just think. Just think. What got me here? How did I get here? What was it just one decision, or was it a series of decisions? I interviewed a guy yesterday for the CD podcast. His name is Glenn Smith. He's a superstar sales guy. Sold like $50 million worth of real estate last year. And we were talking about overcoming struggle. And his statement was 10 miles in, 10 miles out. Right? If you build trouble, it takes you 10 miles in going into trouble. You got to go through 10 miles to get back out of it. Right? You got to be looking at that right now. If you've made some challenge, if there are some challenges that put you in a bad situation right now, think about what are all the decisions that led you up into that bad decision. And then figure out what can you do to get back out. There's a story that I tell in public speaking a lot of times. It's the story of Theseus. I may have actually written about it in this book. I don't know. In fact, I think I did, so I'm going to hold off on that story. But it's a story of going deep into a challenging situation. You got to find your way out. You got to navigate your way out back to success. And you got to be thinking about how you're going to do it. Because I asked those right questions when I was in the beginning journey of my prison term, I had the strength and the wherewithal to reject the negativity, to reject the lifestyle, the criminal lifestyle, to reject all of the hopelessness that exists in there, and instead focus on success. And that's what I'm encouraging you to do. Focus on success. So because I was able to make that case with Chris and Seth, we were able to come to an agreement. And the developers agreed to finance us on the purchase of our first house. Since a real estate, they went above and beyond, saying that they'd like to do business with me. And they said, well, look, since we're dealing this together, owner to a seller to buyer, and there's no real estate agent involved, and they're not going to have to pay a commission. They even agreed to drop $10,000 off of the purchase price. So we bought our property for $390,000 in the fall of 2012. And this is a brand new development. And as a consequence of the developer's trust, they only required us to write a check for $12,000. $12,000. Since the Bureau of Prisons wouldn't authorize me to purchase anything on credit, we initially put the house in Carol's names because they didn't want any issues. They're going to put me back in prison, right? Both of us felt just incredibly grateful and pleased that before I concluded my obligation to the Bureau of Prisons, we'd planted our stake in the ground and we were homeowners, right? We were on our path. We were on our way. Masterminds have frequently said that the harder I work, the luckier I become. And without a doubt, Carol and I were fortunate. So support from people like Chris and Seth or Lee and so many others allowed us to purchase our first piece of real estate in the fall of 2012. And by signing that agreement, we controlled an appreciating asset in an appreciating market. And as I'll describe in the chapters that follow, real estate values increased in the San Francisco Bay Area in 2012, in 2013, 14, and 15. And when those values increased, our equity increased, bringing us more financial stability. And now I'm telling you all this because I want you to see that there was a path for me, a pattern, just as there's going to be a pattern for you. If we didn't have support, we would not have been able to purchase that first piece of real estate. The salient point is that we began sowing seeds for that support long before we purchased the property. Indeed, the decisions that I began making decades earlier, when I was still locked in the Pierce County Jail, as I described in Earning Freedom, before I ever thought about owning real estate, that gave us the track record that we would need. And with that track record, we could persuade others to see us for what we would become, just like you can do. If you're inside of a jail or a prison or in some other type of struggle, whatever it is, I urge you, recognize the importance of every decision that you make, because the decisions you're making today will influence the opportunities that open for you in the future. Consider this lesson. With every decision you make, including the friends you choose, the activities you pursue, and the books you read, every decision comes with opportunity costs. So please choose wisely. Please think it through before you get yourself involved in some type of a predicament or situation that actually, I'm going to use a big word here because I got into words. I was going to use exacerbate or aggravate. That makes things worse. I got to learn to. Here's the crazy thing. When you spend so much time in prison and you educate yourself in prison like I did, you learn your vocabulary you develop from reading, right? And from reading, people use different words when you're writing than when you're speaking. But I didn't speak a lot when I was in prison. I just wrote a lot and I read a lot. And so I developed this vocabulary that might sound sometimes a little bit pretentious, like to use the word exacerbate. I mean, my wife would scold me on it, say, who uses the word exacerbate? And I said, well, if you're in jail for 26 years, maybe you do, because that's all you learn. You learn from reading books, and, it was either learn that or just use the word mother F, all the time. So I learned this vocabulary because I believed it would help me communicate better when I got out. Well, that's an area that I'm still working to develop communication skills, to develop energy and passion. That's what I want you to do. I want you to figure out today what you want tomorrow. What you want tomorrow. Because if you do that, that's what's going to move the needle in your life. That's what's going to make you different from the 7 out of 10 guys who are around you if you're in prison. I mean, that's the reality. The statistics show it. 7 out of every 10 people in prison fail upon release. And it's not only the people in prison, but it's the children of the people in prison. So that's why I feel so passionately about changing that cycle, about disrupting that model, right? I don't like this concept of intergenerational recidivism. I really believe that I got a role in reversing or improving what I consider to be one of the greatest social injustices of our time. And that's a commitment, a wrong-headed commitment to mass incarceration. Instead, we got to be thinking about what we can do better. We got to disrupt a model that isn't working. We got to make things work so more people can overcome struggle, come back to society strong, become homeowners, become successful, live a life of meaning and relevance and contribution, and become a fully functioning member of the fabric of society. That's when I'll feel as if I'm truly becoming the change that I want to see in the world. So we're coming to the end of the 20 minutes here. We've got to an important part, though, because you see now I'm sowing those seeds. It's showing you how did I get to control $1 million worth of assets. Once I owned that home, I had my first $390,000 asset, a house. And as that house appreciated, so would the assets under my control. And that's what I want to show. And we'll be discussing that in the next chapters. Thank you very much. I am Michael Santos with michaelsantos.com. If you're listening to this on the internet, I urge you, please subscribe to the show, subscribe to the podcast, rate and review it if you can. Subscribe to me on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, like me. Let's connect. Let's build a positive network that will help more people be the change they want to see in the world. If you want a free digital copy of this book, Success After Prison, How I Built My First $1 million in Assets Within 2 years, very easy to do. Go to michaelsantos.com, type in your best email address, and automatically a digital copy will be sent to you today. Thank you very much. I look forward to bringing you another episode tomorrow.